My name is John Bryant. I'm an interviewer for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. And this morning, I'm interviewing Mr. William Goings on July the 13th, 2006, at the main library in Cincinnati, Ohio. Mr. Goings, could you tell me a little bit about how you came to go into the military? Were you an enlistee, or were you drafted, or exactly what were you doing?
Well, after graduating from high school in Lima, Ohio, I enrolled at Wilberforce University. And as a freshman at Wilberforce University, you were required to take ROTC, Reserve Officers Training Corps, for 2 years. And then if you selected for the latter 2 years, you went into advanced, which I was lucky or unlucky to be chosen as a member of the advanced ROTC. And by so doing, you were entitled, you were obligated to serve 1 year of active duty after you graduated from ROTC. So I finished at Wilberforce in 1941, was sent to Fort Meade, Maryland, for a 6 weeks training period for the commission to be a second lieutenant on August 18, 1941. At that time, I was sent to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, to join the 366 Infantry, which was an all-black regiment. And
let me stop you just for a second. The entire military at that time was segregated.
True, that's true.
So there was no integrated services at that time. All of the services were segregated.
That's true. But what this 366 was a little bit different. Mm-hmm. We had all black officers from the colonel on down. Our regimental commander was black and all enlisted men. So that was a little bit different for them, because a lot of the units, as you say, were segregated, but they had white officers. But anyhow, we went through the process. We were selected to be trained as a combat unit. So we had to go through all the necessary training for combat. I went to additional courses in Fort Benning, Georgia. We had to run the infiltration courses and the weapons courses and whatever to get ready for combat. So, but in the meantime, we were assigned to do guard duty in the New England states around New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont, guarding the railroad tracks, primarily Canadian Pacific Railroads. It was expected to infiltrate. Of course, after December 41, Pearl Harbor was when everybody got excited as to what we're going to do now.
You went in the service prior to
Pearl Harbor.
Prior to Pearl Harbor.
I went in August 41. Pearl Harbor was December the 7th, 41.
Right.
I was already in the Army.
Could I take you back just for a second? Because you said it was significant that you, the 366, was trained as a combat unit. Most of the African Americans who served were not in combat units. They were in service of supply or something like that.
Or transportation.
Or transportation. Would you talk a little bit about that, and then a little bit about sort of the history of the 366?
Well, the 366 Infantry goes back to World War I. They were activated in World War I over in France, and then they were deactivated, and they were brought back and reactivated in World War II. But they were always considered a combat unit. We went through, as I say, the specific training for combat with all the necessary weapons, combat, and infiltration courses, long hikes, 35-mile hikes, full pack, and that type of thing. Live fire in the front of the fire ammunition, And that was all part of our training for combat. However, we didn't go into combat immediately after we were assigned to. That's what we sent overseas. So
You were sent overseas.
siege as a combat unit. But when we got there, we were assigned to the 15th Air Force to guard airports. Wherever there were airports, the 50th Air Force and the General 20, we were there as to do guard duty with the airplanes. So we, after about, 6 months or so, they begin to ask questions in Washington. The correspondents, primarily black correspondents, start asking questions, why isn't this unit on the front line? They're trained to be combat units, so put them on the front line and let's see if they can fight. So eventually they got their wish, much to my...
So he went into combat.
He went into combat. They gathered us all together and put us in combat, which wasn't a very healthy experience, actually, because I remember the first unit, I was not a combat officer as such. I get to my duties later.
Okay.
I wasn't a platoon officer at the time. But we had a lot of casualties in the front line. The first night we went into I remember distinctly going what they call over the Chinquala Canal, which was down below via radio. And they sent in Company L unit, was about 185 men to cross this canal to stop the machine gun over there. They got about in the middle of the canal and all the hell broke loose. We went in with 135 men, came out with 35.
Say that again, 135 went in.
185, came back with 35.
35.
So the rest of them are in the canal. That was the first experience that I recall personally. I wasn't with them, but I was right around the corner. But that was just one. But I say that today, although we were trained as a combat unit, that was our first experience to be under actual enemy fire. And there is a difference in training and then actually getting under fire. But I was what they call a liaison officer, which was a communication officer between regiment and company, and regiment and division. We were attached to the 92nd Division. One of my duties was to go to a briefing every morning. You probably see it on TV. You go and brief with the general, tell you what to do. I represented the 366 Infantry at these briefings, although I was a lieutenant at the time. And I report back to the colonel.
Wouldn't that be unusual to have a person at sort of that lower rank?
No, there's other guys there besides me, representing their own unit. Captains, majors, lieutenants, whatever. But as a liaison officer, the second lieutenant got all the dirty work anyhow.
Okay. So that was sort of not a desirable detail.
No, but it was a very responsible detail.
Right.
I mean, you could get things sort of messed up if you didn't pay attention. But that was my first job. That's the reason why I wasn't on that front line. But I had several other jobs after that. I was an assistant to the S3, which is the operations officer, assistant to the intelligence officer, S2, public relations officer, personnel officer. They sent me to cooks and bakers school to become a mess officer for the officers' mess. And so all these jobs were in addition to the training, actual training on the guns and machine guns and automatic rifles and all that type of thing. I did receive medals for marksmanship in the pistol and the automatic rifle and the machine gun and all those weapons, as well as I received a combat infantry badge. I do have it here someplace, in fact.
Can I take you all the way back for a second, if you stay where you are here? I want to go back to when you were at Fort Devens.
Okay.
And also when you were overseas. Because you were a segregated unit, and an officer, what was the relationship between the white officers and the black officers at Fort Devens? What kind of interaction did you have? And the same thing then when you were overseas.
Well, truthfully, you didn't have much of an interaction at all, because you had your own area that you were barracked in, and you had your own mess halls, and you had your own entertainment, you had your own supply. We were a separate unit.
Even though there was an officers club, there were separate officers clubs.
Yeah, they had their own separate officers club. We had our separate officers club. So there really wasn't much interaction between them.
Now, when you're overseas, you were the liaison, getting the briefings and all of that. Is there much interaction outside of that between the black officers and the white officers?
No, I mean, you actually were under command of the general. Of course, the general at that time, General Allen, was commander of the 92nd Division. Of course, he was white, and his units, 369th and 368th, and all those other units, they had their own separate commanders, which were primarily white in 92nd. So there wasn't much to do with the task order did what the general said, and that was.
So it was a pretty separate all the way up the line, except that you reported to the same general.
That's correct. General Allen.
but as far as, and you remember his name very well.
Yeah.
But as far as the actual interaction between, even though you're officers, there is very little.
Very little interaction, I recall. I had no personal contact with any white officers to my recollection. And all of them sort of, except in some of the training processes they were involved.
Okay. Now you were telling me about the various training that you had received with the personnel director and mess hall, training to be a mess hall officer and so forth.
Well, as a second lieutenant or first lieutenant, you had all these extra duties, you know. One day you might be a defense counsel for a court martial. Next day you might be the trial judge advocate for the court martial. I had experience one time as the defense counsel. Soldier was charged in wrecking a government vehicle. And naturally, that's a court-martial offense. So the colonel says he wanted this man found guilty. And I, as defense counsel, second lieutenant, figured I'd do everything, you know. I said, my job is to defend this man, to make him, by all legitimate means known to law, to find him not guilty. And that's what I intend to do. But anyhow, my defense was the fact that I said that this man was issued a driver's license, and the man who happened, also who happened to be a member of the president of the court, was a man who issued his license. I said, as a matter of fact, that he was issued a license, made him eligible to drive a car, drive a truck. That upset the old apple cart. As a result, I ended up being the oldest second lieutenant in the unit. But I never got promoted until everybody else got promoted, because I bucked the curve.
Did the young man get off or not?
No, he didn't get off. He called me and he says, I want this man found guilty. He's guilty. I want him guilty. I think he gave him 30 days or something. But that was just one of the jobs that I remember.
So, how long were you then overseas in Germany?
Italy.
Italy.
Let me see.
You went in 1941.
1941. We didn't go overseas till, we went to a lot of places before we got overseas. We went to camp at A.P. Hill, Virginia, Camp Atterbury, Indiana, Fort Benning, Georgia. We were shipped, after that Atterbury went down to A.P., Roanoke, Virginia. It's a seaport down in Newport News. We shipped out of Newport News.
Is there any reason why there was this movement from camp to camp for the unit?
No, I think that was just the way they moved. They moved either the units in front of you or behind you, just the line of march, so to speak. You know, just I don't think any particular reason why they took that particular route. Truthfully, because it's more of the same. So we shipped out of Hampton Roads, Virginia, on a ship called the U.S. Billy Mitchell, one of the big transport boat, held about 3,000 men. I have a picture of it. And all of our own units, about 3,000 men, and there's one big transport called the U.S. Billy Mitchell. And it was packed in there like sardines. And I think there was, in my particular bunk, there was 12 officers in one little room that we took bunk. And it took us 14 days on the Atlantic Ocean to go across the Atlantic Ocean, during which we were attacked by submarines. Naturally, we zigzagged to avoid them. After 14 days, we landed in Casablanca, Africa. And Casablanca means white houses. All of those were white. It was a good sight to see at that particular time.
Traveling, did you get an opportunity to sort of experience different cultures and different, because you talk about Casablanca and the fact that it was white houses, what kind of sort of off-duty things did you have an opportunity to do?
While I was on that ship, we were on the ship 14 days, always saw
water there.
But after we landed in Casablanca, we went to, they sent us to Oran by the old 40 and 8 boxcar. And then from Oran, we took another boat to Africa. We landed in Naples. After we got bivouacked and settled down, then we had an interrelation and set up as a unit, had rest camps and that type of thing. But prior to that, we were all in the process of getting situated.
What was life like then for the average soldier? Do you have any sense of that?
Well, I would say that our particular unit, seemingly the morale was rather high. And of course, these are all draftees in mind. These are drafted soldiers. They weren't drafted. They weren't volunteers. So there were some disgruntles, but all in all, they seemed to be happy in that we were getting 3 meals a day and a lot of sea rations, a lot of Spam. They were given leave where they could go to the cities. Entertainment, we had chapel who had church services every Sunday, whatever faith might be. We always had some characters that deviate from the norm. We had the court martial, OAWL, that type of thing. But all in all, I think it was a very high morale unit.
Now, the USO, were there entertainers and?
Yeah, the USO would send in, District Men had a club, District Men's Club, separately. Now they would go to town, before we went overseas, say to Boston or someplace, and bring in a truckload of ladies, have a dance. We would have a good time. They would do, the USO would do that, or bring some entertainment, not necessarily all. So they did have to dance at the USO.
So the black soldiers essentially had their own separate
Enlisted Men's Club.
Enlisted Men Club, and they brought in entertainers and persons. So it was totally separated, black and white,
Yes. Very
in
much.
terms of up and down the line in terms of the recreational kinds of things that they engaged in, and
All the way through.
all the way through.
Yeah. I guess after a while you sort of expected it and you got used to it. you didn't rock the boat, you just took for granted that's the way it's supposed to be.
And I asked you this, do you have any idea of sort of how long you stayed then in Europe? You indicated that in the first battle, you lost something like 135
That was just one company.
out of 180 persons that were there.
Yeah, that was just one company. But one of the main battles that we were involved in was Christmas. The day after Christmas, 1944. You probably heard this story before. Christmas Day, all Christmas Day, we were under bombing from the Germans. They just bombed us all day long. We'd be bombed. So we knew something was growing, something was coming, because they did waste ammunition, So along about early 26th of December is when it broke loose. And down they came to the what they call the Sergio Valley. And the reason this story is prevalent in my mind, you probably heard of John Fox, who is a native Cincinnati, by the way.
I have not.
Got a picture of him somewhere. Was one of the unit commanders on this particular hill, and they couldn't hold the enemy back, so he called for artillery fire on a certain position. So the guy at the other end said, "Well, that artillery fire will come right on where you're located." He says, "That's where I want to go." So they dickered back and forth, so finally he fired rounds right on his position. And as a result, he was killed. But they did drive the Germans back. So he received the Silver Congressional Medal of Honor for that, for giving up his own life to save the life of a guy in the army for some reason in this operation. But that was John Fox. I thought you might, he was born and raised right here in Cincinnati.
No, that's the first I've heard.
From Lockwood, primarily.
Okay. First I've heard it.
And he has a sister here, in fact, who lives here in Cincinnati. But he was also a member of the 366 Infantry. So that was another incident where, in a way of speaking, it's above and beyond the call of duty. They have, in the meantime, they have set up a memorial in his honor for doing that particular feat.
And he still has relatives and descendants that are still here in the Cincinnati area.
He has a sister who lives in Cincinnati, and his wife lives someplace out in the city. I don't forget where it is. He does have a sister who lives right. Jane Pope, you might know.
So, were there more battles that you recall?
Oh, that's several battles I recall. I didn't want to get into all these battles because I personally wasn't in them.
No, but the unit was.
The unit was, and I was up there holding the commanding officer's hand while all this was going on.
Who was the commanding officer?
At that time, Colonel Queen, Howard Queen, but he later got relieved of duty, sent back to Washington, and Colonel Alonzo Ferguson took over as the commanding officer. He was the one that ready to do this. Let me see here. I had another battle maybe I can. Company B, 366 Infantry, commanded by Captain Walter Devens. He was from Washington. Found themselves subjected to enemy artillery fire, machine gun fire, and small arms fire. Captain Devens' orders were to hold the position during the daylight hours unless forced physical contact. So Company B continued to be pounded by enemy fire, and Company B became somewhat disorganized. Captain Dabney reorganized his unit even in the face of mounting casualties, and in spite of his own wounds, several enemy soldiers were killed. Including the German officer. 12 prisoners were captured. When ordered to withdraw, Company B did so in good order for a gallant action. Captain Dabney was awarded the Silver Star. The first one to be awarded the Silver Star in the 366 Infantry.
The 366 was noted, recognized for what it did in the First World War. And it was noted and recognized for what it did during the Second World War. What happened to the 366?
That's another story. The 366 entered after we were relieved by the 473rd Infantry. February the 26th, 45. I guess we were in 3 battles. We would have 3 battle stars in 366 Infantry. The Rome Arno, the Apennines, and the Po Valley. The 3 battle stars of the 366 Infantry were involved in. We were relieved by the 473rd Infantry. And we were disorganized, reorganized, and made 2 general service engineers units out of the 366 Infantry. With a stroke of a pen, we went from infantry to engineers. I took off my cross rifles and put on a castle.
And what was the significance of that? The 366 was a combat infantry unit, decorated and recognized in both the First World War and the Second World War. Was this a demotion, or exactly what is the significance?
My blunt explanation of this, they took away our rifles and gave us a pick and a shovel. I mean, it's called us engineers to build bridges and dig ditches and make roads for the rest of the units to travel.
Which was sort of the traditional work that most African American servicemen were in, some kind of service of supplies, transportation, cooks and things of that nature.
That's what we call it. It was called service engineers. General service engineers, whatever. Primarily, as I say, we fix roads, potholes, build bridges, concrete bridges. They divided us up in 2 units. One unit stayed in Italy. The other unit went to the Pacific. I stayed in Italy. It was as it was a 226 infantry. Engineer, right? It's hard for me to become an engineer overnight. But that's what happened to 366. By a stroke of a pen. I have letters that the general sent out someplace in our unit to tell them of thanking us and how great we were. We did you on the call of duty and all that sort of thing. But basically, in everyday language, that's what happened.
That's what happened.
Yeah. So the hostilities ended May the 9th. 1945, and we were headed for Hampton Roads, Virginia, going back home.
So you did not make a career out of the service?
No, that was a productive career. That was 5 years.
And so when were you discharged?
Actually, I was relieved from active duty in 45. I remained in the reserve until 1952. So all in all, I had about 11 years of service. after the war, I came back to Lima, Ohio, and I had a family. So it was.
You were not married when you went into service?
I got married while
you were in service.
So I married on the post, in fact.
Okay.
Military wedding.
Here in the States?
In Fort Devens, Massachusetts.
In Fort Devens.
That was marriage number one.
Okay.
So they, so where was I?
You had been discharged, you're
Oh,
married, you're now...
Well, I said, and the reason I brought the marriage fact was the fact that I had to decide now how I'm going to make a living. I had a family to take care of. That was my point. I had applied for the to the regular army. Make a career out of it. I had an appointment to meet the examining board. For some reason, it didn't work out, and so I decided. I got a job. First job I got was working at the state liquor store. That lasted about 6 months, and then I decided I got to do better than this. So I had the GI Bill of Rights, which entitled me to schooling paid for the government. So that's when I decided to come to Cincinnati and enroll in the Cincinnati College of Pharmacy here at UC. That's what I did.
So
that's when my pharmacy career started.
So
but I still had a commission in the reserve.
But you became a pharmacist.
That's right, after going to school.
With utilizing the GI Bill.
That's correct.
What had been your undergraduate degree at Wilberforce?
I was in pre-med.
Okay, so this is just really a continuation of.
Yes, they accepted some of my credits, and actually I only went to pharmacy for 3.5 years. It was a 4-year course. They accepted there was a transfer of some of my credits, which means I didn't have to go to 4 years. Of course, now they've changed pharmacy to 6 years, but it was 4 at the time.
Was there anything that you did in the military that carried over and was assistance to you in your post-military career, other than, of course, the GI Bill?
Yeah, because I can think of there was no. My duties in the Army were not related in any way to the career that I finally found. No. I was set on becoming a doctor, but I sidetracked that. But there was nothing that.
So had you, of course, you were obligated to go into the military by going into ROTC, but had you not had that obligation, you would have applied to go to.
I was headed for
Meharry Medical School.
That's where I planned to go.
Well, then that's interesting. Tell us a little bit about Meharry, and again, the road that an African American took to become a physician.
I don't know that much about Meharry, truthfully, except it's well known as it's one of the dominant black schools of medicine.
Yeah, either one went to Howard.
Or Howard.
Howard or Meharry.
But most of them, either one of the two, that's what I was saying.
If you were going to be.
So, I mean, that's the same way we were going to college. At that time, we didn't have much choice what college we were going to. 9 times out of 10, you went to a black college. That's the
reason you went to Wilberforce. And how did you hear about Wilberforce from Lima? Was that well known?
Well, my brother went to Wilberforce 2 years ahead of me, 3 years, 2 years ahead of me. My mother was a graduate of Wilberforce. Wilberforce is backed primarily by the AME Church, which I happened at that time was affiliated with the AME Church. So Wilberforce was number 1 on the list. Either that or go to Ohio State. It had to be someplace in Ohio. Plus Wilberforce was much cheaper. I didn't have any money. At that time, tuition at Wilberforce was $250 a a year. And for that, I waited a table from the board, so, and at Advanced ROTC, we got paid, so I didn't have much of a problem
Going to
paying my bills.
So after the service, you became a pharmacist. Located back in Lyman?
No, it's Cincinnati.
Here in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I graduated from University of Cincinnati in 49. I had done my internship with the state board in 1949, in November of 49, and after passing the board, I tried to get a job here in the drugstores. Couldn't find one. They weren't, most at that time, most of the drugstores were individually owned. The chains hadn't moved into Cincinnati at that time. So I bought my own store, started my own store at the corner of Buena Vista and Walters at Walnut Hills.
I don't know exactly where it is.
Right on the corner, January the 1st, 1950. I stayed there for 15 years. In the meantime, I bought another store at Clark and Bay Miller, which I don't think exists anymore. They tore it right at the streetcar bend. I had a store down there. Then I opened up an apothecary at 543 Rockdale. This is where the Battle Funeral Home is now.
Okay. I don't know where that is.
We opened a medical building there, doctors, dentists, pharmacy, and lab, all of them built there. Then I had landlord problems over on Gilbert Avenue. So I said, the next time I move, I'm going to be my own landlord. Because he wanted my space to put in a laundromat. So I moved to Burnett Avenue, corner of Burnett and Mellish Avenue, which is now Martin Luther King Drive. Bought the store from the Secretary. And stayed there about 3 years, I guess it was. The city decided we want this property as a hospital complex, as part of the hospital complex. So they took the property under the rights of eminent domain. So we'll find another location if we want to. So, of course, at that time the chain stores were moving into Cincinnati, so I said, looked at the situation, I said, I think I better go get me another job someplace. So I closed up the store and went to work for Super X. Closed up one day and went to work the next day. And worked for, I started off at People's Corner on McMillan Street. It's still there, CBS now. Worked for them for 21 years. And I retired from there as a pharmacist in Cincinnati. Of course, they would put you in several different stores. At the time I worked Forest Park, Mount Healthy, Kenwood, where else did I work? Loveland, Milford. So I was sort of where they opened up a new store, they wanted to see another face that said me.
You were the person.
So I retired from pharmacy, as I say, in 1985. Then I worked part-time for East End Health Clinic and Pioneer's Pharmacy over on College Hill. I still wasn't satisfied. I went into real estate. I went to Southern Higher College and took the necessary courses to become a real estate salesperson. Went to the board and became a real estate agent, which lasted about 3 years. but I did very well in that time.
Were you an independent?
No, I worked for Ben Allen, really.
Ben Allen, okay.
Really, you know.
I might know the name.
No, I was an agent, not a broker. So that's basically, after that, I just said, well, it's time to
You became a man of leisure.
be a man of leisure.
I'm going to go back and tell you a story
Uh-oh.
that parallels your story to a certain extent. A portion of one of your stories. I went in the service. I enlisted in 1954, and I was a court-martial clerk. And the colonel said we're going to have a court-martial at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. And the Sergeant Major Simpson, said, Colonel, I looked at all this, we don't have enough to court-martial this man. And the colonel said, Simpson, there's going to be a court-martial 2 p.m. Brad's going to go down there and be part of that court-martial. He's going to be found guilty. He's going to be sentenced to 6 months in the stockade, and he's going to forfeit 2/3 of his pay. Brad went down at 2 o'clock, recorded that court-martial, guilty, forfeiture of 2/3 pay.
Cut and dry.
So that parallels the story that you told when you were the defense counsel.
Yeah, they had it all figured out.
Is there anything else that you would like to tell me that I should have asked you and didn't ask you?
Oh boy, I don't know what that would be. But I don't know whether this would be relevant, but during this time, especially in civilian life, I found that I was became engaged in a lot of civic activity, community activities, as about working with the YWCA, YMCA, and within the churches, things like that, being on committees and so forth. I found out that whether they expected me to do that or whether I did do that, in fact, which has been a part of my experience in Cincinnati, is working with the public and being on boards and that sort of thing. I was appointed, the first reason I bring that up, the first experience I had was I was appointed to the Marriage Friendly Relation Committee.
Virginia Coffee?
You know, Virginia Coffee, which is now Cincinnati Human Relations. I was appointed by Mayor Walpole, who was the mayor at that time, as a member of the Marriage Friendly Relation Committee. I don't know what you call it. She's still there. That's the same committee. Then we were talking back after the war, everybody was more conscious of flag and the veterans and so forth. So we formed the American Legion unit. The Ralph H. Green American Legion unit. You've heard of that. Named after Lieutenant Green, who was the first casualty in the Korean Army, Korean War, that they named the unit after. We chartered 135 men was our charter. But I was the first commander of the
Ralph H. Green,
Ralph H. Green American
Legion.
Command. So we did a lot of good work in the community at the time. It was there, everybody was active.
Now, the officers that you served with in the 366, you ever had any reunions or anything of that nature?
They do, as I understand it, have a reunion. I've never been to one, but they have them up around Washington, D.C. As I said, the bulk of the officers, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, the bulk of the officers in in the 366 either came from Howard University or Wilberforce University. Because they had ROTC at Howard too. So that they would have reunions around Howard in Washington D.C.
But you never really was an active participant in that. Well, Mr. Doyle, I want to thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure for me to have an opportunity to talk with you and hear you reminisce about your time in the military. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to do so. I hope in some way that I've enlightened some people along, maybe help somebody along the road somehow.
I'm fascinated in terms of the changes that have taken place in the military from the time that you left to sort of the present. Things that you probably couldn't have imagined in terms of like Colin Powell becoming the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and those kinds of things. Any looking back in retrospect and changes that have taken place that have sort of astounded you from the time that Harry Truman issued the order desegregating the military to the present?
Well, I'd say there's been a lot of changes. Referring back, my first military instructor at Wilberforce was Regiment Old Davis Senior. That's my first military instructor. Junior came along later on and was the head of the 92nd Pursuit Squadron.
Who was Benjamin O. Davis Sr.?
The first black general in the United States Army.
Okay. And who was Benjamin O. Davis Jr.?
That was his son.
And in addition to being his son,
he was made general also in charge of 99th Pursuit Squadron, 332nd Fighter Group, out of Tuskegee Air. I get it straight out of Tuskegee Air. Yeah. But I forgot what my train of thought.
Well, we were talking about the fact that your first instructor.
Yeah, I was Bill Davis. But he made quite an impression on me. I called him a true soldier. He was a soldier all the way through. But cool. And then we had one West Pointer in our unit, James Fowler. Of course, we've had several since then. But what's his name? Guy you just mentioned.
Colin
Powell. I guess he just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Because he made a remarkable when he was head of the Armed Forces Chief of Staff, which I say at the time I would never dream that he would reach that height. And we had was the first two. Very proud, very, very capable man. And a soldier.
This is a postscript, so I guess I get to thank you again for all of the things that you've shared with us today, and it's been a delight for me.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Okay.
Mr. Goins, you indicated that you were commissioned as a second lieutenant, and you also mentioned that for the first 3 years you were not promoted, and that you had a little bit of a disagreement with the colonel over a court-martial that you were the defense counsel for young men. But did that permanently sort of stymie your career? What happened in terms of your career?
Actually, this incident was not a matter of record as such. This is something that, I surmised as there wasn't any other reason why. So I said this had to be the reason why, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But later on, I was promoted, just before we went overseas, I was promoted to first lieutenant. And after the war, while I was on leave, I was promoted to captain in 1946. Captain in So I was discharged as a captain.
Captain. And then you went into the
Reserve as a captain.
And stayed in the reserve for
Till 1952.
to 1952, which is the outbreak of the Korean War had taken place, but you were not recalled back.
That's another story.
Okay.
I was in the drug business at the time. I had finished pharmacy and I opened the drugstore, and they said, because I had been attending reserve meetings. Remember Art Mary?
Mm-hmm.
The cop?
The cop.
He and I were in the same reserve.
Okay. The guy that's in the sky.
Yeah. But anyhow, we met over in Kentucky. They sent me a letter, wanted me to go to Korea. And I said, no. Just got out of this thing, I don't want to go back. He said, well, you're in the reserve, you're obligated to go. I said, well, I'll tell you what you do. If you transfer me in grade to the Medical Service Corps, I'll go. I was a captain now. Transfer me in grade to the Medical Service Corps as a captain, I'll go. Oh no, we can't do that. As a captain, I would have been in charge of a field hospital or something like that. Something of that nature. You sent me as a second lieutenant. I said, no, you're going to demote me now to go down. He said, no, we can't do it. I said, I'll tell you what you do. You take this commission, you know what you can do with it. And that's the reason I didn't go to Korea.
So so they were going to take you off of...
I had my own store. I just got started. I went, no. So I rebuked that one.
And so that officially...
I turned my commission. I said, take the commission.
And so you have been...
I've been in Vietnam and everything else if I stayed in.
Yeah, because you were still you were within an age range, an officer that...
I was subject to go. But they couldn't bust me down to a second lieutenant, captain. And I had finished pharmacy, so which meant I was eligible for another branch of service.
There were a number of other Second World War veterans and quite a number of Tuskegee Airmen here in the Cincinnati area. Do you know or have any connection to Lawrence Hawkins?
And Lawrence.
Art Lear.
See John Lear.
John Lear.
See John every Sunday at church.
And there's an Art Hull.
Arthur Hull. He's kind of under the weather right now.
Right. So even though you haven't had a formal sort of reunion with the persons that you served with, you know.
I know that.
Carl Tuggle.
Carl Tuggle. Saw him yesterday at golf.
So there is at least this group of you who are...
Carl Tuggle was in the Navy.
Second World War veterans. And actually you and Arthur Hull should have been at the University of Cincinnati at the same time, I believe. Art was in business at the time that you were finishing up and Arthur also was on the Human Relations Commission.
And he was on the school board, I know.
He was on the school board, but before that, Art was on the, had to be the Human Relations.
Of course, I was on there a long time ago. It was the American Relations Committee, which is the same thing.
Well, again, this is, I think, the third or fourth time that I've thanked you for sharing with us. And is there anything else?
No, I don't think. We don't want to dig too deep. Don't want to go too much deeper.
Again, thank you very, very much.
Okay.
I appreciate
you.
Same outfit. You should have mentioned that.
And I hadn't got around to it.
He had an older brother that served in the same outfit with him, and he forgot to tell me.
Well, I had mentioned that before.
We have had people
Not big.
come back for second
Yeah,
interviews.
I
I won't be back.
Oh, wow, is that a wonderful picture?
He's still around, by the way.
Really?
Just had a heart attack.
Where is he? In Lima?
in Cincinnati.
Well, are we going to interview him?
No. He wouldn't come down here last
So-
time.
When is